Marc Junkerman. He's an active law enforcement commander in the Baltimore metro area with over 25 years of experience in various operational assignments. In addition, he serves as a peer support CISM presenter, trainer, and consultant to various local, state, and federal public safety and service agencies. He's a passionate advocate of front-end wellness and resiliency education, which has led to the creation of the Decide to Thrive program for public safety. And joining him in the program will be another good friend who he's the kind of person when something happens in a police agency, even some distance from his home, all it takes is a phone call, and he responds immediately and tries to make a difference there. And a lot of the agencies that are sitting out there now know that as a fact, that he's a guy who you can count on him to step up to the plate. So Chuck Hart is a police supervisor with 33 years of experience in a variety of specialized assignments. He is a mental health, first aid, and crisis intervention team instructor, and teaches in an assortment of various specialized training courses that focus on communication and de-escalation skills, along with conducting life-threatening injury and death notifications. He provides peer support to first responders and serves as a peer support group facilitator. So please welcome these two gentlemen. I think you'll see that progress is going forward, and that's where they're going to try to take us, is to go forward.
We good? Thanks. Hey, how's everybody doing, okay? So, greetings to some of you. I met some of you today when we had our little session downstairs, and I appreciate you not throwing vegetables at me or anything like that. I think the day went okay. We also realize that we are between you and libation and other things. So, as I said earlier, realizing that bacon and whiskey are actual food groups, we're going to move this along for you, okay? So we're going to try to figure out the green button here. This is how the push is paying off, okay? As quoted by my friend Chuck Hart more than anybody. One of the things we've been recognizing over and over is the fact, and echoing what the chief said, the previous presenter, is the need for not only mutual support, mutual aid in our peer support approach, in our CISM approach, but also the ability to nip things in the bud before they happen, to work, as we like to say, left of bang, to do the work on the front end and inoculate ourselves so hopefully we don't struggle as much on the back end. It's a flu shot. It doesn't mean you're not going to get the flu, but it reduces your chances, and it also reduces the intensity of that flu. So just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, you got me and Chuck here. And I don't know about the Jaws reference. I made a Flintstone reference a couple days ago, and I realized I'm getting older because I got the puppy dog head tilt from people. And I said, Flintstones. And they looked at me. I said, they were cave people. They had cars. They used their feet for brakes. And I went, you can talk to Professor Google. You'll figure it out someplace. So Chuck has been my partner in many critical incidents, and I do appreciate him always having my back and our back. Before we go any further, I talked to Chuck about this to make sure he was okay with it. On this day last year, we lost Officer Amy Caprio. She was killed in the line of duty as a result of a felonious assault. Chuck lost a sister that day, which means I lost a sister because he's my brother, and so was she. She went down fighting, which showed you what kind of cop she was. But if you knew Amy, what was even more impressive than the type of cop she was the type of person she was, and how she lived her life every day in uniform and out of uniform. So if we could just take a second to pause, remember those who are departed, not to mourn, but to celebrate who they were, what they left behind, and what we've learned from them. thank you so much for helping us honor her. Can you play the video? This is kind of our presentation in a nutshell. What happened? In a nutshell, what happened to the poor guy? The wrong car, right? Is he out there scraping his heart out? Does he have good intentions? Is he hoping for Skittles and rainbows and warmer days someplace? Absolutely. You know what the only problem is? Somebody forgot to tell him he was a sucker. Somebody forgot to tell him that hope and good intentions in your heart is not an action plan. It's not an ops plan. Hope and good intentions are great, but the world is unfair. Fair is simply a weather condition. Sometime in our lives, and hopefully sooner than later, we need to recognize the fact that it's better to win by design rather than default. I will take luck any day of the week. But the work we do on the front end, well before we have to respond to critical incidents, the work we do on the front end, well before we are confronted by sometimes what are the horrors of this job, that's where we make our money. And that's what we kind of want to talk to you about just briefly here tonight. What we've been seeing recently, at least in our region, and what we're hearing from across the country now, when it comes to sort of an approach to peer support and what that actually means. So in the last 2 years, we have experienced 3 active assailant incidents in our area. If you count the situation in St. Mary's County, which was a school shooting, but I don't think that was actually classified as an active shooter incident. The 3 active assailant incidents, Advanced Granite in my county, which is Harford, which is just north of Baltimore, the Rite Aid distribution facility, and our friends from Anne Arundel County, Annapolis area with the Bestgate, with the Capitol Gazette shooting. There were the 3 that we dealt with. We had the shooting in St. Mary's County. We've had 4 LODDs and 1 firefighter line of duty death that we've dealt with. And in my area, we had a crash on Route 24, which what that means to you, large road, bad crash, a lot of people died. Bad morning to be on the job for everybody. So we know that these things are going to happen. We know these things are going to happen. We know it's going to snow, it's going to be cold, we might have to scrape a car. So when we go out there without a plan and it doesn't work out, should we be shocked? No. And what do? We blame the weather. It snowed. The scraper was wrong. The car, it was that other guy's fault because the way he parked his car. We end up blaming everybody but ourselves. And what you're going to find out, and what most of you have already found out, it's not the job. We blame this job. We blame our professions. It's not the job. This job has been hard for a long time. It's been hard for a long time. So what we have started talking about is asking ourselves, not the job, but how are we responding to the job? What are we doing on the job? It's CISM 101, right? It's not the incident per se. It's your response. It's your perspective. It's how you deal with it. We talk about that stuff after the fact. The question is, when are we going to start talking about that left of bang, well before these bad things happen? So I had an epiphany, which for a cop is a strange way of saying I had a bright idea, and it really wasn't my idea. So we've had these active assailant incidents and all these critical incidents, and we've had critical incidents before, and some have been bad. And I noticed after those critical incidents, obviously with line of duty deaths, those sort of things, there's a lot of trauma. There's bad things that happen. But we had 3 active assailants. And I'm not saying that there wasn't trauma after these events, that people were not suffering and there was some things we had to do on the back end. But for some reason, it wasn't as, I don't want to say bad, it wasn't as intense. There wasn't as much trauma response as I had expected. Other people may differ. Other people had different experiences, but this is what I saw. And when I asked our troops, our men and women, 2 of them where we actually responded together and 1 where I supported, I said, how do you kind of feel about this? What are you doing to put this in perspective? And you know what I heard? I didn't hear that 5 people died or 10 people died or 15 people died. I heard we saved a lot of lives. I heard that I felt like I knew what I had to do, and I felt like I had the tools to do it. I heard that the bosses actually did a good job, which I said, can you repeat that and write that down and send that in an email, and when we're going to save that and take a screenshot and all this other stuff. The bosses kind of knew what they were doing. We all worked together, fire, police, EMS, dispatchers, support personnel. And I went, why is that? And the chief was talking about it earlier. In our world, law enforcement, it's a training called ALERT. It's a very simple training. It's active shooter law enforcement response. Everybody goes through the same training pretty much everywhere now. So whether you're in Texas or you're in Maryland, you go to ALERT training. Whether you're a federal officer, a federal agent, a local police officer, you go to ALERT training. We're all trained the same. And it's good training. It's really good training. I had Doc Wellsant and Doc Everly came to the training. I don't know if Doc Durkin's in here. I mean, we geared them up. We had them to Sims. Things were blowing up. They were digging it. They're not going to tell you, but they were digging it. In their wingtip shoes, they were digging it. They did a great job. But we realized that because of that training, that inoculation on the front end, our folks were doing better on the back end. And it translated to the fire side with our rescue task force. And when we talked to the firefighters and the people who responded, it actually worked. So the question came up, if we know this works, why aren't we doing it? And I asked Doc, I said to Doc Everly, I said, can you explain how training works? And please don't make it a 3-credit course because counting to 11 requires me to remove a shoe, okay? So just help me out here. And he broke it down so simply and so eloquently that I kicked myself and realized that for 25, 30 years, I've been kind of training people the wrong way. And a lot of it has to do with starting from that front end, from square one, day one, and having the right mentality. And the mentality we talk about and what we now preach from the first day, our young deputies, police officers, troopers, agents come in from the first day they hit the street, or before they even hit the street, first day, we talk about this mantra of accountability. We talk about this mantra of wellness and resiliency. And it's pretty simple, but it's very complex. Every day, you got to commit to the mission. You got to know why you're getting out of bed. You got to have a purpose. And if yesterday was bad, you take the lessons, you learn them, you pay your penance once, then you move on to today. You got to have a reason you're getting out of bed. It starts here and now. Then you got to take ownership for yourself. Mind, body, spirit. Not just on duty, but all the time. We take responsibility for ourselves. And then the last part, we're accountable to and for our peers. It's not just about having well-trained peer teams and CISM. It's about building a culture of wellness and resiliency where those well-trained peers become the resources and the operators that they should be, because everybody's a peer. Everybody in our world needs to be a peer. What's your mission? Take ownership for yourself, be accountable to and for each other. And what I realized was there was an agency right around the corner, Baltimore County Police Department, with Sergeant Chuck Hart, who does everything for everyone that's doing a lot of this. So Chuck, I'm going to turn this over to you, and this is your show now. Tell them what your agency's doing.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. So we had to do things by taking our lumps, and we created a class called the Effects of Critical Incidents on Law Enforcement Officers. And that class showed us how banged up we really are, and we have a lot of walking wounded among us. That room became a safe room. It was the first time in my career, it was over 3 years ago, in 30 years, that I didn't see a single soul in there texting or having sidebar conversations. And actually, we created a safe room because people had to vent. They were holding and suppressing these emotions. And then it became, well, what are we going to do about this? We now recognize it. So what we did from there was we created a peer-to-peer support group that has nothing to do with our agency. We go through our FOP. We meet at our lodge. We meet every 6 to 8 weeks. It's an open forum. Sometimes we have clinical support in there as far as to talk about specific topics, doctors, clinicians, and also we've had yoga instructors come in. Let's start doing some things. Instead of just talking, let's put some things into action. And then we opened it a little bit wider and said, wait a minute, we got to blend the blue with the red. We're all on the same scenes. We're all absorbing the same trauma. Our roles are different. We see scenes different. Included. So we now have our peer support group is open to police, fire, medics, dispatch, crime lab. It's all inclusive. All we ask is we promise each other, nobody will discuss what's said in here or who is here. And then what do? How do you take it, put it, and mold it into the agency? How do you change that culture? Because it's like stopping a freight train standing in front of it. So what we were able to do then is through our CIT program, our crisis intervention training, we spent probably a third of it on self-care, wellness, and resiliency, where we have courageous individuals from our own agency are willing to come in and share their stories. Not from what they were involved in so much tactically or operationally, but what was the aftermath? What did they go through emotionally, mentally, psychologically? And what did their families endure? And what we'll find is we don't include our families in a lot of this. We keep quiet. So we're changing that. And then from there, we actually started putting on presentations for our executive corps. An executive corps in Baltimore County is captain and above. So from there, now we put on these specialized training courses that might talk about substance use. But then we actually have somebody come in and tell their story of how they were struggling with substance use issues. And now one of the best things that we do, orientation for new recruits. On that Saturday, we're in there. Our recruits, they get removed from the room. We talk to the families about what the changes they're going to see in these individuals, their loved ones, and how do we mitigate these stressors. So we continue to have better service for our people, and if they're well at home, they're going to serve well out in the field. And then on the second day of the academy, after their culture shock, when you can finally figure out their left from their right and what a march and attention and all that, they dog them for us. At 7:30 in the morning, we have them again, and we go for about an hour and a half to 2 hours talking about stress and how to deal with this. But it gets better, because while they're going through the academy, there's a collision sometimes with their personal life and their professional life, and it's seen in the classroom. And now the instructors are calling for the peers saying, do you mind coming in and talking to one of these? I see some changes, which keeps them in their instructor role, puts us in the peer arena. So we've been very successful with that. And then before they hit the streets, we really hit them up with what they're about to experience. So we're just trying to create that culture. So we've been very, very blessed so far. And I'll just say this, last year we had 111 peer requests. So we're going up and up and up. So we're making a better agency. So, Mark?
And I have to say, with my little bit of experience, in this arena and traveling around a little bit, Chuck's actually downplaying a lot of what's getting done. And there's other agencies that are doing it as well here in the state of Maryland. Okay, Baltimore County is one of the premier. Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County, Howard County. There are lots of agencies in our region who get it. They realize that after the unrest, the riots that we had just around the corner from here, that afterwards we could not recover. We could not respond by ourselves, and we definitely can't recover by ourselves. We learned that. We learned what mutual aid actually was. And then we learned that mutual aid is more than just when bad things happen. We are very fortunate because of those agencies and people like Chuck to have a network where we can get on the computer right now and say, got a cop, had an incident, it's been triggered, had EMDR in the past, it worked. Does somebody know a clinician in, within 20 miles of Baltimore who can take him or her on a Wednesday? And we're getting pop-ups. We're getting more responses than we can handle sometimes. In my world, a few years ago, we were lucky to get one or two. And it wasn't because there wasn't people out there to help. It's because we weren't connecting with those people before the bad things happened. The clinicians with the peers, the firefighters with the law enforcement agencies, the federal government with the local municipalities. It's about that connection. It's about that ability to call somebody on the phone and say, hey, Jim, this is Junk. Hey, Jane, this is Junk. How's your kid? How'd they do at that lacrosse game? How did that graduation go? Cool. You good? Yeah. By the way, can you help a brother out? And get that kind of help. That is the model that Baltimore County has really done a great job, and others, moving forward. Front-end inoculation versus back-end response. Does that mean we do not need back-end response? Absolutely not. What we hope is that if we create these cultures of wellness and resiliency within our agency, people will not need as much back-end. But the people who do need it, now they're easily identified, and we have the resources to help them because we are using the right tool for the right job. Creating a culture and not just programs. I had a team at one point that I put together, and I failed miserably. Why? Because I had a lot of cool paperwork and jackets and call-down sheets, but I had created a team. I had not created a culture. Individual versus team-centric peer support, okay? Again, while those teams are important and we have those teams, those peers do more than just simply respond to bad things. They act as resources. Mutual aid versus self-care. I do not help my people anymore. Here's what I mean by that. When something bad happens in my world, I call Chuck and I say, I need some support. I call Steve. I call Jennifer. I call Gunny Plum from Prince George's County. I call Doc Alice from the Maryland State Police and I say, I got an incident. Can you help me? And never once have they said no. Not to mention our friends, our support, our educators through the ICISF who are always there to lend us technical support, tactical support, and anything we need. It's inclusive. It's not exclusive. Again, we all need to be peers. The most important thing, it's about being proactive. It's about being proactive leaders. You are all leaders in this room, regardless of your rank. If you are doing peer support, you're a leader. Why? Because people are coming to you. People are confiding in you. People are talking to you. And people respect who you are and what you do. And that's a really nice compliment for all of us in this room. Chuck Hart's famous words, pay me now or pay me later. I'd rather pay a little bit more on the front end than have to suffer on the back end and then really pay. So Chuck, I think you've got a slide here.
So if we're all honest,
That's not me, by the way. That's not me. So.
if we're honest with one another, I got a big now. We got a long way to go. Just like that dog has a long way to go to be an emotional supporter of therapeutic. We're on a tight budget. We went from a transfer and we're trying to change the German Shepherd to be a therapeutic vet.
So I will just finish with saying thank you all for what you do. Be safe, be well. Remember to work left of bang. I think it is libation time someplace, and I know some of you are on multiple clocks, so thank you so much for having us tonight.